Before Batman ruled Saturday mornings and Spider-Man spun animated webs, there were other caped and costumed heroes, forgotten pioneers who battled evil across atomic landscapes and surreal storyboards. From spacefaring rabbits to atomic knights, these cartoon legends of the 1950s helped shape the superhero mythos before fading into history. Here are 15 of the most forgotten cartoon superheroes from the atomic era. Number 15. The Adventures of Paddy the Pelican, 1950. It is one of the most infamous train wrecks in animation history, and yet Paddy the Pelican remains a surreal example of a superhero cartoon that barely happened. Animated by Sam Singer, the show was pitched to WNR-TV as a potential kids' hit. Paddy was a crime-fighting pelican who wore a detective hat and solved bizarre criminal cases in a noir-like parody of superhero stories. But the production was a disaster. Animation was barely completed, dialogue was mumbled, backgrounds were crude sketches, episodes reused cells so aggressively it looked like the characters were melting. Yet under this chaos was a genuine attempt to create a superhero bird who protected the innocent. His villains were thieves, burglars, and mad inventors with outrageous machines. What makes Paddy fascinating is not quality, but intent. It was a genuine attempt to tap into the superhero boom of the post-war years using animal characters and slapstick action. Today, only a few episodes survive, and they are often watched for laughs, not admiration. Still, Paddy the Pelican deserves his spot as one of the first animal-themed superhero cartoons aimed at television. He may not have saved the world, but he showed that even the strangest heroes had their shot at stardom. Number 14. Crusader Rabbit, 1949 to 1957. Long before Rocky and Bullwinkle, there was Crusader Rabbit, the very first animated television series in history. Created by Alex Anderson and Jay Ward, Crusader Rabbit was not a superhero by caped definition, but he was undoubtedly a heroic figure battling injustice across serialized episodes with his dim-witted sidekick Raglan T. Tiger. Presented in short 5-minute chapters, Crusader Rabbit was a fearless underdog who took on tyranny monsters and mad kings. Though the animation was static and limited, the writing sparkled with satire, wordplay, and clever subversion. In many ways, Crusader Rabbit acted as a parody of superhero tropes, but he also embodied them. Courageous, moral, and driven by purpose, he marched into absurd conflicts armed with only cleverness. The show's production was groundbreaking. It was one of the first syndicated cartoons produced directly for television rather than theaters. Despite budget restraints, it became a hit, proving there was a hungry audience for animated heroes on the small screen. Crusader paved the way for TV animation and inspired the structure of future superhero serials. Though often forgotten today, Crusader Rabbit's blend of clever storytelling and heroic themes laid the groundwork for many animated champions who followed. He might not have worn a cape, but he changed animation history forever. Number 13. Colonel Bleep, 1957. Colonel Bleep was the future, literally. As the first color cartoon created specifically for television, Colonel Bleep launched kids into space-age adventures filled with ray guns, alien threats, and patriotic undertones. Created by Robert D. Buchanan and Jack Schley, the show introduced Bleep, a cosmic law enforcer from the planet Futura who defended Earth from galactic evil. Bleep teamed up with a caveman named Scratch and a puppet named Squeak, forming one of the most bizarre hero trios ever imagined. They traveled across Earth and space, protecting humanity from monsters, spies, and intergalactic tyrants. The animation was minimalist, with bold color palettes, geometric designs, and eerie atomic music underscoring every action sequence. What made Colonel Bleep revolutionary was how it embraced the anxieties and dreams of the atomic age. Nuclear science, space travel, and Cold War paranoia were embedded into every episode. He was a symbol of atomic optimism. The very concept of using science as a weapon against evil made him a true superhero of his time. Yet, despite its innovation, Colonel Bleep slowly disappeared. Its original film reels were lost for decades. Only partial episodes and restored segments remain. But for a brief, glowing moment in television history, this forgotten cosmic crusader brought children atomic justice in living color. Number 12. Super Mouse, aka Mighty Mouse, 1950s shorts. By the 1950s, Supermouse had already soared through the golden age of theatrical cartoons. Rebranded as Mighty Mouse, he became one of the first truly iconic superhero characters in animation. Though he debuted in the 1940s, it was the 1950s television reruns and repackaged shorts that made him a household name and a standard-bearer of rodent heroism. Mighty Mouse wore a cape, flew through space, and rescued the innocent. His formula was simple, but irresistible. Damsel in distress, villain in pursuit, and a last-minute flying punch. He battled cats, robots, witches, and even alien invaders. The music swelled operatically as he announced, "Here I come to save the day." For a generation that grew up on Cold War fears and nuclear optimism, Mighty Mouse was a comforting presence. Though the animation was recycled and stylized, the storytelling never lost momentum. Kids cheered as Mighty Mouse took flight, smashed evil, and floated back with a wink. By the mid-50s, the cartoons were broadcast on Saturday mornings, helping establish the entire idea of superhero cartoons as television staples. Yet, over time, he faded. Licensing battles, redesigns, and changing tastes buried him beneath newer, flashier heroes. But if you trace the DNA of every animated crusader who followed you, will find traces of Mighty Mouse, the mouse who dared to fly higher than any hero of his time. Or number 11, Tom Terrific, 1957. Drawn with a wobbly line and powered by pure imagination, Tom Terrific was a superhero like no other. Created by Gene Deitch and aired on Captain Kangaroo, this early television cartoon featured a young boy who could transform into anything he wanted: a saw, a submarine, a superhero, or even a solution to a cosmic problem. Tom wore a funnel cap, spoke with gentle confidence, and had a loyal dog named Manfred the Wonder Dog. Every story saw Tom using brain power over brute strength to outwit his arch-nemesis Krabby Appleton, whose motto was, "I'm rotten to the core." In an era obsessed with muscle-bound champions, Tom offered something radical: intellect as power. Animated in a bare-bones style, using limited motion and black-and-white cells, Tom Terrific relied on clever writing and surreal storytelling to keep children hooked. Its charm was undeniable. Tom was not just a superhero, he was the embodiment of creative thinking turned into heroic action. Despite its popularity at the time, Tom Terrific has been largely forgotten outside animation history books, but his legacy is vital. He proved that a hero did not need a cape or muscles, just a wild imagination and the will to do good. In many ways, Tom Terrific was ahead of his time and a hidden gem of 1950s superhero animation. Number 10. Johnny Jet, 1953. Johnny Jet was a short-lived but fully animated superhero cartoon produced in 1953 by famous studios as part of their effort to compete with the growing wave of space-age heroes. Johnny was a futuristic teenage pilot who operated a transforming jet plane that responded to his voice commands and gave him near superhero status across the skies and space. Dressed in a streamlined flight suit and equipped with high-tech goggles and a talking ship named Jetson, Johnny fought alien invaders, rogue robots, and futuristic gangsters. Every episode featured dramatic rescues, high-speed chases through asteroid fields, and pulse-pounding cliffhangers. Johnny Jet was essentially a blend of Captain Video and Superman for the atomic age, designed specifically to capture the young television audience that craved heroism and space adventure. What made Johnny different from ordinary pilots was his ability to communicate with and partially merge with his superjet, giving him an edge in speed and power. His stories followed the classic superhero formula. Number 9. King Leonardo and his short subjects, prototype shorts, late 1950s. Before King Leonardo and his short subjects became a full series in the early 60s, it began life as a series of loosely connected cartoon shorts in the late 1950s. These early vignettes leaned heavily into superhero parody, featuring the titular Lion King of Bongo Congo, taking on ridiculous villains with exaggerated royal bravado. Leonardo was a noble, if bumbling monarch, constantly under siege from power-hungry evildoers like Itchy Brother and the scheming Biggie Rat. Though framed as a king, his adventures unfolded like superhero episodes, complete with gadgets, epic quests, and morality lessons. The character's strength lay not in power, but in perseverance and occasional cleverness. Supporting characters like Odie the Skunk and the Professor helped expand the absurd world that often poked fun at classic superhero tropes. The animation style was simple and bright, featuring stiff but expressive motion and stylized backgrounds. While the series evolved by the 60s into a more structured program, its origins in the late 50s served as a testing ground for superhero storytelling on TV. These forgotten shorts revealed a transitional moment in animation where kings and lions could play superheroes without capes and still thrill young viewers hungry for colorful justice. Number 8. Bippo the Superclown, 1955. Yes, it sounds absurd, but Bippo the Superclown was a real syndicated cartoon superhero from the mid-50s, and he wore a cape. Produced by Pintoff Productions in 1955, Bippo was no ordinary clown. He was a superhero in makeup armed with flight-strength elasticity and a surprisingly strong sense of justice. Bippo's episodes saw him rescuing children animals and even towns from absurd villains like fire-breathing dragons, mechanical men, and hypnotist robbers. With each crisis, he leapt into the sky, threw pies of justice, and outsmarted evil with cartoonish brilliance. Despite his comedic tone, Bippo followed the true superhero format: secret identity check, costume check, powers check, and a moral code to protect the innocent. Clips and full shorts have resurfaced online, especially in retro cartoon archives and public domain compilations. Though his name sounds silly, Bippo truly operated as one of the earliest examples of a comedic superhero in animated form, predating the likes of Freakazoid or Earthworm Jim by decades. Number 7. Flash Gordon, unreleased animated pilot, 1959. In the twilight of the decade, legendary sci-fi hero Flash Gordon was prepped for an animated television takeover. The project began in 1959 as a collaboration between comic syndicates and early television studios, hoping to bring the spacefaring swashbuckler to kids in serialized cartoon form. It never aired, but the production left behind tantalizing glimpses. Storyboards, model sheets, and voice test recordings were made. The animation style mirrored pulp comics of the era, using bold line work, dramatic poses, and lurid alien landscapes. Flash was imagined as a superhero archetype: fearless, athletic, laser-wielding, and morally unshakable. Ming the Merciless appeared redesigned in even more menacing detail, while Dale Arden and Dr. Zarkov received updated character arcs. Though funding ran out before full animation could begin, the blueprint survived. Many of its designs were later reimagined in the fully realized Flash Gordon cartoon of the late 1970s. Still, this 1950s attempt was ahead of its time and would have been one of the first true animated space superhero serials on American television. Flash Gordon's unaired pilot serves as a forgotten cornerstone in superhero animation history, a lost leap toward a universe of cosmic justice that almost was. Number 6. Space Angel, 1959. Before Space Angel officially launched in the early 60s, its development began with a series of concept reels and test animations in late 1959. Created by Cambria Productions, the hero was a masked space pilot named Scott McCloud, who patrolled the galaxy in his starship Starduster, keeping peace across the stars in superhero fashion. What made the show unique was its use of synchrovox, a technique where human lips were superimposed on animated characters to simulate speaking. This gave Space Angel a surreal, almost uncanny presence. Even in the earliest test reels, McCloud was shown foiling space pirates, diffusing alien wars, and confronting galactic conspiracies, all in the tone of a cosmic superhero saga. Though the full series came later, these early animations embodied the DNA of superhero storytelling. They presented a masked man with moral clarity and advanced tech battling evil in defense of peace. The character's disguise, his code of honor, and his dramatic poses resembled Superman as much as Flash Gordon. These pilots were never broadcast and are rarely archived, but they mark a quiet transition into the new era of sci-fi superhero animation. Space Angel was not just a pilot. He was the bridge between pulp space opera and animated television justice. Number 5. TV Popeye Superpower Shorts, 1950s variants. By the time the 1950s rolled in Popeye, the sailor had already thrown more punches than any hero in cartoon history. But during his television run across the decade, a surprising evolution took place. Popeye episodes began subtly shifting into full-blown superhero territory. Though he had no cape, Popeye became a spinach-powered protector with gadgetry new villains and full-on superhuman feats. These 1950s TV shorts leaned into his larger-than-life persona. Popeye faced mad scientists, evil robots, underwater kingdoms, and space-age threats. One episode saw him rescuing Olive from a Martian invasion. Another had him traveling back in time to save history itself. The punchlines were still classic, but the stakes had risen dramatically. What made these episodes unique was how they reframed Popeye as a proto-superhero. His spinach was essentially a radioactive power source. He battled evil in increasingly fantastical ways. Some episodes gave him a superhero costume complete with capes or gadgets designed by Professor Watta's nozzle. The shift was subtle but undeniable. The sailor had turned into a capeless avenger of justice. Modern viewers often overlook these cartoon shorts for their theatrical origins, but Popeye's 50s run shows how traditional characters were reshaped to match the booming superhero trend. He may not have worn tights, but in every way that mattered, Popeye was a hero for the new atomic age. Number 4. The Marvel Superheroes Precursor Reels, 1959. Long before Marvel conquered screens around the world, their first steps toward animation were far humbler. In 1959, a series of experimental test reels were produced, featuring Captain America, Namor the Submariner, and the Human Torch. These black and white animation tests were never broadcast, but they laid the groundwork for Marvel's television presence. These reels were rough. Panels from comics were minimally animated. Mouths moved, eyes blinked, fists clenched. But the intent was clear. These were superheroes brought to life for the screen. Captain America battled Nazis and swung his shield across sliding frames. Namor rose from underwater kingdoms to challenge surface invaders. The Human Torch engulfed villains in blazing fury. Though these pilots never made it to air, they were shown to investors and studio executives. They helped pave the way for the full-color Marvel Superheroes series that aired in 1966. That show would use similar limited animation, but with soundtracks, narration, and a lineup of Marvel's best. These 1959 test reels are a lost chapter in superhero cartoon history. They were not made for fans. They were made to prove superheroes could thrive on television, and they did. These reels were the flickering embers before the firestorm. Number 3. The Adventures of Pow Wow the Indian Boy, 1956. It may seem strange to label Pow Wow the Indian Boy a superhero, but in the context of the 1950s, the show functioned as a heroic morality tale with all the hallmarks of early superhero storytelling. Each 5-minute short followed a young Native American boy named Pow Wow as he embarked on adventures that always ended with him defending nature, preserving peace, or outsmarting danger. Aired as part of the Captain Kangaroo program, the show was narrated like a legend told around a campfire. Pow Wow had no magic powers. What he had was wisdom, courage, and an almost supernatural connection to nature. He confronted threats like wild animals, blizzards, and rival hunters. Every time he emerged victorious, not through violence, but through cleverness and integrity. Though culturally outdated and simplistic by modern standards, the show introduced a unique kind of indigenous heroism to children's television. Pow Wow was a protector. He respected elders, healed rifts, and balanced tradition with bravery. He was not a masked crusader, but his actions followed the exact structure of hero's journey storytelling. Today, Pow Wow the Indian Boy is largely forgotten, but in his quiet way, he functioned as one of the earliest animated defenders of peace. A humble boy turned weekly hero across American living rooms. Number 2. Atom Man vs. Superman. Animated openings, 1950. Though Atom Man vs. Superman was a live-action serial starring Kirk Allen, its animated openings offered the only glimpse of Superman in cartoon form during the early 50s. These brief intros, often 30 seconds long, featured Superman flying across painted skies, lifting cars, and deflecting bullets in simplified, limited animation reminiscent of the Fleischer Studios' legacy. These sequences were used to transition from the title credits into the live-action episodes. The visual shorthand made it clear. Before you saw the actor, you saw the myth. Superman was real, larger than life, and already saving the day. For young viewers, this was magical. It framed every episode as a superhero story before the plot even began. While not a full cartoon series, these animated openings served as connective tissue between the Superman cartoons of the 1940s and the fuller animated adaptations of the 60s. They proved that even in an era of budget constraints, studios knew the value of seeing Superman fly. It was a brief flicker of animated Kryptonian glory, but to a generation of kids tuning in, it was everything. These forgotten intros helped Superman remain a Saturday matinee legend before TV would fully embrace him in ink and motion. Number 1. Tom Terrific. Already featured earlier in this list, Tom Terrific deserves to stand tall at the top. As a shape-shifting child superhero aired on Captain Kangaroo in 1957, Tom was more than just a stick figure in a funnel hat. He was a pioneer in television animation and a clever inversion of traditional superhero tropes. Tom could become anything he needed to save the day: a rocket ship, a balloon, a thundercloud. But he rarely relied on brawn. His greatest power was imagination. Each 5-minute episode pitted him against fantastical villains like Krabby Appleton or faced him with impossible tasks. With the help of Manfred the Wonder Dog, Tom overcame it all with logic, wit, and heart. The animation was crude, but the impact was deep. Tom's adventures became templates for countless cartoons that emphasized thinking over punching. He was a superhero for the smart kids. He wore no cape, but redefined what it meant to be heroic on the small screen. Tom Terrific may have looked simple, but his stories were profound. In a decade of Cold War tensions and atomic anxiety, he reminded children that imagination could save the world. Before Justice Leagues and animated universes, these forgotten 1950s cartoon superheroes defined early heroism on TV. Some were brave mice, others were time travelers. They fought, or thought their way through danger, and while most were lost to history, they built the foundation for everything superhero animation would become.